Called me last Saturday, needed a meet and fill in, so told him to come on down. And he's a missionary to Papua New Guinea, Brother David Zraik. So I'm going to have him present his work for us this morning. He's going to be preaching for us this morning. Amen. So Brother Zraik, come on up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Blessed to be here. I do appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Pastor, for allowing me to come and be able to present on a short notice. Is it back on? All right. Let's put the thing back on. Press the power button. Me and electronics don't get along very well, so I apologize if I mess anything up. But I'll just go ahead and briefly introduce myself real quick. My name is David Zraik. My family just made a mass exodus pretty quickly here. I guess they're going off to Sunday school. I'll show you their picture in a second here. But we are going to Papua New Guinea. We are sent out of Bible Baptist Church down in Pensacola, Florida. And, let's just go ahead, and I'm going to get right into the slides here. And if we have time, I'd like to open up for questions at the end. But anyway, we've been on deputation now for close to a year. We are very close to having our full support. God's been very, very, very good to us throughout all this COVID stuff. So we're thankful for that. This is my wife, Melissa, right there. We've been married for about 7 years. It'll be 7 years in just about a couple of weeks now, June 14th. That's my daughter, Clarissa. She's 5 years old. My son, John, just turned 4 a couple of weeks ago. And that's the star of the show right there. That's Mackenzie Lynn. She'll be a year next month. And again, we are the Zraik family heading off to Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea is an island nation just north of the Horn of Australia. The western half, that's Indonesia right there. But that black arrow, that's depicting where we are going specifically on the northern coast to a city called Wewak. Papua New Guinea has about 9 million souls in the country itself. Wewak has about 25,000 souls. So as far as the country itself goes, Wewak is a pretty decent-sized city there in Papua New Guinea. The official languages are Pidgin, or Tok Pisin, and English. And then underneath the 2 official languages, you have 850 tribal languages. It's a very staggering number. Those aren't just slightly varying dialects. Those are completely different languages. It'd be kind of like in America back when it was run by just nothing but Native Americans, all different types of languages and subcultures and things like that. So it's a very, very large work just based on that number alone. As far as religions, you have all your usual suspects, all your Catholics and Lutherans and all that, all the way down to Baptists at 2.8%. It's a very, very small number. Out of 9 million souls, 2.8% would claim to be Baptist. Now this right here is what's called a house tambourine or a spirit house. This right here is what I would call the core of Papua New Guinea. By tradition, a New Guinean, they are animistic, which means they worship all kinds of spirits. The spirits of the birds and spirits of the air and the ocean and the rivers and all those different everything. There's a spirit for everything. So they're animistic. Everything's animated. Mainly, their main spirit that they worship is the spirits of the ancestors. And they're very big into ancestral worship. And this house tambourine, this spirit house, is one of their kind of worship houses, if you will. And really only men are allowed in these places, and they're just a demonic setup. This right here is a very typical village setup that you'll find over in Papua New Guinea. A lot of their houses built on stilts, mainly to keep the bugs out. That's one of the main reasons why they do that. Also for it's a very rainy place, so also keep the floors dry. They elevate the houses. Most have a grass thatched roofing and some kind of matted material to wrap around the structure of the house for their walls. Just a very humble existence, very typical village setup that you'll find over in Papua New Guinea. Now this right here I affectionately call the Wewak Walmart. Just a few covered areas here. It's an open air market basically. The top 2 pictures depict their diet. They eat a lot of seafood being on the coast. That's actually dried piranha. I'm not sure what that is right there, but some kind of a seafood wrap kind of deal. And then you can get your greens and some nuts and coconuts and things of that nature, and then some apparel. Mostly on the floor, that's bilams. A bilam is a purse, and men and women both carry a bilam over in Papua New Guinea. They stick their loose change and fruits and nuts and things like that and go about their business. And that's one of the main markets there in Wewak, Papua New Guinea. Now this right here is 2.7 acres of land that Brother Joseph Anderson purchased before his last furlough. That's the missionary that I will be working with when I get over to Papua New Guinea. The purpose for this land is for him to build his house on that property. When my family moves over there, Lord willing, this November, we'll start building our house on that property as well. I went to Papua New Guinea back in June, July of 2019. The main reason was for me to do a survey trip, see if God would have me go to this field. And also, one of the main reasons was to help Brother Anderson develop this property. We were going to chop down all the trees and the underbrush and build a fence around his property. But the work you see done, that's all that got done while we were there in about a month's time. The reason for that is you're not going to Remax and putting down a lump of money for some property. You're dealing with a very complex tribal setup. So there's tribal leaders, there's family owners, landowners. It's a very confusing and complex setup. And as we were chopping down the trees, one day we're working and some New Guinean comes walking by the trail and he's waving a machete, yelling at us at the top of his lungs. And come to find out, when Brother Anderson purchased the property, he gave the landowner the money for that property. But what he was not informed of was that he only purchased the ground you stand on. Somebody else owned the banana trees. Somebody else owned the sack trees and the coconut trees and all that kind of stuff. And confusion ensued, and it was a frustrating time. And the physical work came to a screeching halt. Now, obviously, God knew what he was doing. And instead of us doing nothing but physical labor, I got to see a much broader view of the mission field. For me to watch Brother Anderson deal with all these tribal leaders and the family owners and settle these disputes was very instructional for me to see, very educational. So I got to see a lot more details of the mission work and how things go and don't go over there in Papua New Guinea. I also had more time on our hands, so we got to go to the jail. I was able to preach for a while. Brother Anderson preached. That's actually Brother Dave Robinson. He's a missionary in Malawi. He was there on the trip as well. Now, we both preached for about 15, 20 minutes apiece, and at the end of that service, about 12 or 15 souls got saved. And folks, I tell you what, it was an honor. It was an absolute privilege to be there and see God just come in that meeting and work and convict those souls. And you could see it on their faces. When the souls that you dealt with, you could see that they meant business with God. And it was an absolute privilege to have those unbathed, unshowered men put their arms around you and give them the gospel and see them get saved. It was a privilege to be there. I also got to preach in Honiak Bible Baptist Church. You know, I still love putting those words together. Honiak Bible Baptist Church. Honiak Village is a little humble village out in the middle of nowhere, Papua New Guinea, that nobody will ever hear about, know about, or care about. But there is a Bible-believing church with a Bible-believing pastor. And he's a good preacher, but he's not just a good preacher, he's a good pastor. This is Pastor Willie. He takes care of that church. He takes care of his flock. He believes that Bible, he reads that Bible, he preaches it, he teaches it. Very, very good work that got started by Brother Tom Johnson back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And that church is still going today under the pastorship of Brother Pastor Willie. And that church is already established, but we'll be working somewhat with him while we're there in Papua New Guinea. This is Manny Beach Baptist Church. This is the church that we'll be most closely working with while we're there in Papua New Guinea. That's Pastor Ruel. He's a Filipino. Been there for over 10 years. Got a work started. The plan was for him and Pastor Francis to be back in the Philippines by this time. However, COVID has struck and they're still there in Papua New Guinea. I think the latest I heard, Pastor Ruel has changed his plans. He's going to be going to America, Samoa at some point, but there's some details involved. Anyway, this brother right here, Brother Bernard, that's the individual that we kind of are hoping will take over that work eventually. He got saved about 8 or so years ago. A faithful man. He's kind of the church custodian. He does some teaching and preaching as well. The people in the community around Manny Beach Baptist Church respect him. Just a very good man. We're hoping that he'll eventually take over that work. Now, I'd like to ask that you please pray for Manny Beach Baptist Church specifically. There's a lot of turmoil going on around this church. Where that church, I'll back up one slide. Where this church is physically located, on either side of this church, there are two feuding factions, And I'm not sure exactly what all is going, why they're feuding, but they're getting drunk, they're fighting, and it's affecting this church because they are physically located right in the middle of some really nasty things going on. So please pray that God protects Manny Beach Baptist Church and that some people will get saved and that things will kind of settle and normalize over there. I just received a text a couple weeks ago from Brother Anderson. About 20 souls got saved in this surrounding area. That's a very good start. So please pray that God would protect that church and keep working there in Manny Beach area. This is Pastor Benny Chris. He's another pastor there. The name of his church is Calvary Baptist there in Wewak. We'll be working somewhat with him. He's got a good church established, good man, good preacher. It's a privilege to get to know him while I was there. And he's got a good work going, and we'll make ourselves somewhat available to him while we're there as well. But Manny Beach Baptist, that's the church that we'll be mainly working with. Now this right here is what we would consider the heathen in Papua New Guinea. I want you to look at this picture and just kind of let this image kind of work on your mind a little bit. This man is not heathen because he's got the thing through his nose, the face paint, the headdress, half naked, all that kind of stuff. That's not why he's heathen. The man is heathen because he's lost. He's without God and without hope. Now, we got the heathen in America. The only difference is the heathen in America, they wear a business suit. They have a different set of apparel. Over there, this man, they paint their faces. They do all this kind of stuff. And if you read something like National Geographic or whatever kind of media outlet, they'll tell you it's a beautiful culture. Watch them paint their faces. Watch them dance and sing and all these beautiful, wonderful things. Well, folks, I'm here to tell you it's not a beautiful thing. It's not beautiful at all. The man's heathen. He's lost. Now, like I told you before, these New Guineans, they're animistic. An animistic person, they worship all kinds of spirits. But here's the thing. It's not a benevolent relationship with these spirits. It's a very, very fearful thing. This man is painting his face. He's wearing that headdress. He's doing all these different dances, and he's getting ready for a sing-sing. It's a sensual, devilish dance to appease the spirits because they're afraid of these spirits. This man lives in fear, and he's going to die in fear, and that's all he knows. That's it. It's not a beautiful thing. It's a very fearful thing. You and I have a benevolent relationship with the Lord. These people here, I mean, folks, everything in their life is governed by the fear of the spirits there in Papua New Guinea. They are very fearful of them. It's a very sad sight. And that's the heathen there in Papua New Guinea. Now, I'm going to back up by way of testimony. I was raised in a born-again, Bible-believing Christian family. I mean, I was raised with a spiritual silver spoon in my mouth. I was raised in a good Bible-believing church almost all my life, and I got saved at the age of 5. Salvation is very simple. You know you're a sinner, you believe on Jesus Christ, you ask Him to save you, and you're saved. The sad thing is my Christianity stopped right there. I did not grow. The reason for that is I never read the Bible for myself. I never developed a prayer life for myself. I never spoke up and was a personal witness for the Lord for myself. And therefore, my spiritual growth was stunted. And I'm going to fast forward through a lot of years, but I found myself in the United States Army as a backslidden, just wayward child of God. Just a selfish, living like a child of the devil, but I was saved. And I found myself in my last deployment in Afghanistan. I was not looking to get right with God, but He began to soften my heart. And He did it with little kids like this, little young innocent boys, little innocent girls like that, just innocent little children. And it began to tear away at my heart. See, I was raised right. I had the right upbringing, I had the right background. I knew better. And I began to have these conversations with God saying, Lord, these kids have no other option. They don't know anything. All they know is this Muslim, Islamic setup. They're born into that setup, and they're going to die like that. That's it. That's all they know. And it was tearing away at my heart. And I tell you what, a young airborne infantry young soldier going back to my cot crying over these little kids. And it was tearing me up. And the Lord said, well, what are you going to do about it? And boy, I tell you what, as a young backslidden man, I had my sights set on some different goals for my life. And I put those thoughts as far aside as I possibly could. The last thing I wanted to do was be a missionary, let alone in some desert that I hated. But God was soft in my heart, Eventually, he broke my heart, and he did that. My back was broken, my neck got messed up. I was in a helicopter crash, and some things happened, and the Lord was coming hard after me. He was chastening me, rebuking me, and I got right with God. I'm thankful to say that. I got right with the Lord over there, and after I got out of the Army, I went straight down to Pensacola, went down to PBI, graduated 2015. After that, I moved out to Omaha, Nebraska. I worked with my father-in-law at his church out there for about 5 years. And then God called me to another venue to find some young boys and young girls, some old men and old women that really have no other option. Folks, they are raised out, especially out there in the bush. All they know is that animistic setup. That's it. And it bothers me. And it bothers me to this day. They don't know any better. And they'll claim Roman Catholicism or Lutheranism or whichever specific religion is close to them that benefits them, that gives them clothing and food and water, things like that. They'll claim their religion, but they're still animist. That's all they know. And it's very sad. It's not a beautiful culture. It's a very imprisoning, damning thing. And we're clawing at the bit to get over there. Our goals for our first term is to learn the language and learn the culture. Those go hand in hand, and they're absolutely vital for a foreign missionary. We're not going to try to Americanize the Papua New Guineans, nor are we going to take on their cultures ourselves, but we need to learn their culture so we can most efficiently and effectively minister to these people so that we can, number 3, win souls to Jesus Christ. And not just win them to Christ, but also disciple them. It's one thing to see them say, I have had the privilege of personally leading some Papua New Guineans to the Lord. And like I said, I'm itching to get back over there and see more souls saved. But I would love to see them get discipled and become true followers of Jesus Christ. Train local pastors as we plant new churches, and also keep that prison ministry going. And pray that the Lord will get that prison ministry back to where it was before COVID. They want us to come back in, but they want us to be part of their ecumenical group. And as of now, we're just not going to do that. So pray that the Lord would open that door back up to the way it used to be. So those are our goals for our first term as we get to Papua New Guinea. So send I you to labor unrewarded, to serve unpaid, unloved, unsought, unknown, to bear rebuke, to suffer scorn and scoffing. So send I you to toil for me alone. So send I you to bind the bruised and broken, or wandering souls, to work, to weep, to wake, to bear the burden of a world so weary. So send I you to suffer for my sake. So send I you to hearts made hard by hatred, to eyes made blind because they will not see, to spend the wit, be blood to spend and spare not. So send I you to taste of Calvary. The Bible says that he that goeth forth and weepeth, bearing precious seed, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him. That word right there says doubtless. And that's the promise that we're going to hang our whole ministry on right there. There's no doubt about it in my heart. As we continue to weep for souls over there in Papua New Guinea, as we bear the precious seed, which you know is the Word of God, there is no doubt about it. We will see souls saved. I've already seen it. And like I said, I can't wait to get back over there. Hopefully this November, that's my targeted date to get over there. And we'll bring those sheaves, the precious souls that Christ died for, with us. Man, thank you for your prayers. I know we've just met, but I'm certain that God's people will pray for us. No, we've already experienced God's provision on the road. We've experienced His protection. There's been some things that have happened out there on the roads that He's taken care of us. And that is because God's people pray. And that is the most important thing. Yes, we need the support. I understand all that, but I implore you I beg and beseech you for your prayers. And we can't thank you enough for it. So if you would, please pray for the Zraik family as we head out to Papua New Guinea. We got prayer cards on the table. Please take as many cards as you would like. They're in the format as a bookmark, so you can mark your place in your Bible that you're reading or whatever. Stick one on your refrigerator or however many you want to take, please take them. And also, I'd ask that you please, if you want, put your email address on that notebook back there on the table. Just please write legibly. It never fails. Every church we go to, we'll write down, people write their email address, we try to type it in, and we get back this, failed receipt or failed to send because we can't read them sometimes. But if you want to receive our bi-monthly prayer letter to your personal email, we'd be more than happy to send it out to you. And you can keep abreast of what's going on, keep apprised and pray with us as we head out to Papua New Guinea. And we thank you very much for your time. Now at this time, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to take questions right now. Any questions? Sir?
What originally got you looking at Guinea?
Well, I closed my eyes and I threw a dart at a map. No, I'm just kidding. No, like I said, I was raised in a Bible-believing Christian, Baptist church all my life. So I've seen all kinds of slide presentations like that from Papua New Guinea, Africa, China. My heart has always been kind of tender or towards third world countries. Even when I was backslidden, that thought would always bother me of those souls in the third world country that have never heard, and so my desire is to get out to those tribes that have never heard the gospel. When I got right with the Lord, went down to Bible school, I happened to run into Joey Anderson, missionary there in Papua New Guinea. My first year down at PBI was his first. He came on his first furlough from Papua New Guinea. We both played the trumpet in the band. We were sitting next to each other, struck a conversation, and found out that he is a missionary there. And so I expressed a desire to come and visit him. And long story short, I graduated PBI. I was in Omaha, Nebraska. And he actually came on his second furlough through Omaha, and he stayed at my house for a few days and talked a lot about Papua New Guinea and expressed again my desire to come and visit the country. And he gave me an open invitation to come whenever I wanted. Long story short, he left on his furlough, travels, whatever. 3 or 4 months go by, and I'm at the store. I'm on the phone with my wife, and I said, and for some reason, God put it very heavy on my heart. You better call Joey Anderson today and set a date to go. For whatever reason that was, I got up. The first thought on my mind that morning was to call Joey Anderson. And I'm out and about, and I'm on the phone with my wife, and I said, I'm going to call Joey Anderson today, this afternoon. When I get back home, I'm going to call him. I'm going to set an actual date to go over to Papua New Guinea. Because I don't set a date, it's always going to be this thing that I want to do sometime in the future, right? And so anyway, I hung up, with my wife on the phone, and literally, I hadn't talked to Joey Anderson the whole time after he left my house. 3 or 4 months go by. I hung up with the phone, put my phone in my pocket. My phone rings. I pull it out, and it's Joey Anderson on the phone. Like out of nowhere. I mean, I had goosebumps. I'm like, did I accidentally dial him? What's going on here? And it was Brother Anderson, and he started talking about, his furlough had to be extended. His wife was pregnant, and he said, "Do you want to go with me to Papua New Guinea to do a trip to help me with my property out there?" Because he knew I was handy with construction and things like that. And I'm like, sure, I mean, it was an obvious leading of the Lord. So I had my own business, so I had the funds, I had the time, and I made that survey trip back in July of 2019. And I was there, and God He burdened my heart for the souls of Papua New Guinea. At that time, the Lord was dealing with my heart about missionary work. I didn't know exactly where. I was thinking about Papua New Guinea or the Amazon or Brazil, and the Lord just opened up the door for me to go to Papua New Guinea, broke my heart for the souls. And soon after I got back, I was working on a sermon about blind Bartimaeus, and the Lord just confirmed the call, just go by blind faith. I was looking for a sign. I had that burden, I had the burden. I really wanted to go, but I know that there's a difference between a burden and a call. And I didn't want to be like Paul and just have a burden to go to Jerusalem, and mess things up. And so God just confirmed the call to go, and I surrendered to that, and the rest, as they say, is history. That's a long, short answer, sorry. Anyone else? Sir?
How did the treatise get?
So that's a good question. It's actually just now almost completely resolved. It's been almost 2 years since that first happened. Like I said, it's a very complex thing. There was one guy within all these landowners. It seemed like every dispute was being settled. Basically what happened originally was when Brother Anderson purchased that property, he gave the guy the money, and he was very deceitful about it. But the Lord worked things out. He ended up paying out of the money that he received. He paid for the trees on that property, which is kind of unheard of. They were trying to get Brother Anderson to pay more money to pay for buy the trees and all that. But then there was somebody else within the landowner that was trying to sell half of that land to somebody else. And it was just, just confusing and a mess. So what's happening right now, they had the village court. That's all settled. Now it's going to a district court. And so right now, if you please pray for that, by the way, that there are some proceedings that have to go on and other things. And like I said, it's hard for me to even explain it because I don't fully understand it. But pray that God gets that settled. Hopefully in the next couple of months, all the disputes will be settled. And as far as it looks right now, everything's in Brother Anderson's favor. It should work out just fine, but pray that it moves along speedily. But it's still in the works. Brother?
Do you know how many, what you consider good missionaries are in Papua?
There's a handful. The Wells, they were trained in a Bible-believing school up there in Boise, Idaho, at Treasure Valley. I don't think the Brogdons are still there. Do you know? No. Was that? Mrs. Johnson did. Brother Johnson's still alive. He's here in the States now. He lives in Washington, Chehalis, Washington. Yes, sir. Brother Bailey's church. I would say there's a handful, not a lot. And that's the problem, too, is in Papua New Guinea is such a very rugged and rough place, and the tribes are so segregated. It really, there needs to be a lot more Bible-believing missionaries. There's a lot of missionaries there, but there's like new tribes and YWAM and all these ecumenical kind of, they're not Bible-believing works. And they're trying to translate, and that's another confusion, they're trying to translate Bibles into their languages, but they're using corrupt Bibles to do that. Now, Brother Gerard, he's still there, and he's a Bible believer, and he translated recently the King James into Pidgin. It's a very good work, and that is the Bible for Papua New Guinea. But there's a handful of good missionaries there. Anyone else? Brother?
In terms of support, how much support do you need to be able to survive over there? And what are the logistics like to get things? Is it easier because you're coastal?
So support, I always hate putting this number out there because to me it just sounds extravagant. But $5,500 a month is what our target is, and we're pretty close to that. It's a very expensive place to live. You wouldn't think that being a third world country, but it's an island, and you got to go through all these different hands to get things to the island. And then not only that, but it's a very corrupt place. So when things do come through customs, you got all these different people that are upcharging things and all these different taxes and fees and stuff like that. To give you an idea, when we were chopping down the trees over there, right away, Brother Anderson's chainsaw broke. So we went to this kind of hardware store to look for a chainsaw, and they had a knockoff, not the actual one, but a knockoff of a Stihl chainsaw. And it was a cheesy-looking thing. It was white and orange. It looked like a Stihl. The font of the words it looked like Stihl, but it had some weird name to it. But they wanted, for a knockoff of a Stihl chainsaw, they wanted $1,500 US. So anything that's manufactured in any way, anything that touches, any kind of hands in any way, it's very expensive. If you can pluck it out of the ground and eat it, if you can catch it out of the ocean and eat it, it's cheap. We had lobster for like $1 a lobster. So that's very cheap. But as far as anything else, their housing, anything, it's very expensive. So that's our target goal for monthly support, and we're about 97% right now. And then the other question was, we just sent out a parcel of mail a couple of days ago, and we're expecting it to get there June 14th. So it usually takes about 2 or 3 weeks for anything to get to Papua New Guinea. That's just an envelope with some paperwork in it. Then anything beyond that, there's all kinds of other customs and things like that. We're going to ship a container over there with most of our goods that we're going to take with us, things like that. And that'll take probably 2 or 3 months to get to us. Buying a vehicle, Brother Anderson just purchased a truck from Japan about 2 months ago, and it's still got another month to get there. So logistics, I mean, there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of things to go through, hoops to go through to get things there. So that's a complicated thing. Yes, sir. Sir?
What type of government is there?
It's sort of a democracy. Oh, what is it? Democratic. I need to bone up on that information. But it's they do have a president and they have elected officials, things like that. But again, it's a very corrupt thing, very corrupt. But see, as far as the government goes, I'd like to speak to that for a second. They're very open to missionary work, it was wide open. When I went over to Papua New Guinea, when I flew into Port Moresby, the capital, I knew that I was going to have to purchase a visa to be there. So when I filled out the paperwork, I gave all the information that was necessary, and on the slot that said what the reason for my visit, I put missionary work, and I gave it to the guy, the official there, and they stamped my passport, gave me my visa for free, because they're just very welcoming to missionaries. Brother Anderson was on a plane one time with one of the very top echelon government officials, and he sat right next to him, and he gave him the King James Pidgin Bible, and he thanked him for it and took it. So they're very open in that regard. But the government, it's a corrupt system, but they do have some kind of overreaching thing. Somebody else? I thought I saw their hand. Ma'am? Right, so we are going to build a house. It won't be like their huts that they have. It would actually be an insult to them in their minds for us to live down to their level. They expect us, they would take it as just being kind of condescending. So they expect a white person to live a little higher standard. We're not going to have a house with, 2x4 studs and drywall and insulation, all that kind of stuff. But we will have a structure that has like maybe 3 or 4 rooms in it. Brother Anderson, when I talked to him last, he's planning on building like an 800 square foot house. So it's very small. It will have electricity. It will have running water. The running water is pretty consistent over there, and it's actually potable. You can drink it. Because they have, in Wewak, they have an army base. So because they have that base, they do have a water treatment facility close by that we can tap into. As far as electricity, we'll have electricity, but it's very, very spotty. You're not sure how long you'll have it, when it's going to go off, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you'll be falling asleep, and the ceiling fan will go off. Just throughout the day, it's on and off, on and off. So we will have electricity, though. We will have running water, and we'll have some kind of a structure. And it'll be basically, we're planning on purchasing a sawmill, and milling out our own lumber. So we'll have like 2x4 studs, but then we'll wrap the house with like this matted material, and you can actually see through it and have a bunch of windows. So it's not like we're going to have air conditioning, things like that, but very basic. Ma'am?
When you were saying like this chainsaw, and they want 1,500 American, is that price because you're an American versus a local person who wanted to buy it?
No, that was a ticketed price. That was, we saw it, they had the American dollar sign, and then they have Kina. So they had their Kina was like, I think 5,000 Kina, something like that. I can't remember the exchange right now. But no, that's just the price.
It actually, is
Yeah.
Their price and our price is the same?
Yeah, yes ma'am. Anyone else? Well, we got 5 minutes remaining. Do you want me to just end it, or do you want me to do a quick devotional, or it's up to you, whatever you want.
What's the average Papua Guinean style of living for economic conditions?
Okay, that's a good question. So the average Papua New Guinean, they're poor. I mean, they're kind of hunter-gatherers, basically. They'll live, so their living condition, they'll have like 4 or 5 just one-room huts in like a semicircle. And they sleep inside the huts, and they live inside that circle. I mean, they cook in there, they eat outside. Everything's outside pretty much. So basically the houses that they have, their houses, whatever, is for sleeping. That's about it. And then they grow their own gardens, raise their own livestock and things like that for the average Papua New Guinean. You go to Port Moresby, Mount Hagen, even in Wewak, they'll have some businesses there that people work in. And I asked a question because it kind of struck me as odd. You have these New Guineans. We went to there's one hotel there in Wewak we went to, and they had a restaurant. It was pretty decent. And the waiters, they're New Guineans. They're natives of Wewak. And I figured they would probably live in an apartment or something like that. And Brother Anderson said no. They had their uniform. That's the only pair of nice clothing they have. They go back to their hut, and they live just the same way. A lot of those who do have jobs, they will save up the money they have because they don't have bills, and then they send their kids off to some school, and they try to better their children's future. So the average New Guinean, I would say, just live in huts, and they're kind of almost that hunter-gatherer mindset, basically. You go out into the bigger cities, they'll have jobs, they do have apartments and vehicles and things like that, but that's kind of, I guess, maybe higher middle class, whatever. Brother?
Do schools teach the kids to read Pidgin or English, or what's the literacy rate?
They are very...
Kids go to school or what?
Illiteracy is very high over there, a very high rate of illiteracy. They do have a school system, and as time progresses, they have more and more schooling infrastructure and more availability for that. In Wewak, I drove by their school, and it looks like a ramshackle, like you would consider a run-down, abandoned building. So they do have schooling. It's not the greatest, but they are learning more and more. Pastor Willie, I heard him preach, and as he was reading his Bible, he struggled through it. And that's a pastor who's been, pastoring for a while. He learned English. I think Brother Johnson taught him how to read, I think. So that could be down the road a ministry that we could get involved in, is teaching them how to read. That's vital. That's a very important thing, obviously. But illiteracy is a very high rate over there. They do have schools, but it's not the greatest. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate that. And I will make myself available afterwards for any more questions at the table. And again, please take as many prayer cards as you like. And again, if you want to put your name on that notebook for the prayer letters, we'd be more than happy to send that out to you. Thank you.